With this route not being paddled, of course we had to go with the notion that we had to maintain portages along the way. So we traveled with a medium-sized chainsaw and fuel and tools to make that happen. As you can imagine, it was spring, high water, and a significant whitewater trip. With no experience, I was pretty excited, but I was also filled with trepidation. We did a series of 4 portages that brought us out to Skate Lake for the night. It took us 3 solid trips across portages, including cutting, swamping, and carrying our gear. As you can see, we took 2 Wanigans, and I think there are 3 barrels, a large orange pack, some camera equipment. We weren't light by any means. Day 2 would take us out to, take us from Skate Lake to Wildlands Lake. We knew this was going to be a tough day, and we started through some of the most beautiful old growth black spruce forest, and the moss was knee-deep at times. Jeff has some flagging, pathfinding experience, so he would wander off into the bush, and Bob would follow along with his chainsaw, and I would swamp the stuff out of the way, and then Gord and Matt would follow up with the gear, although there was still several trips to be done after they had finished. This lasted for about 200 meters, and then we came out to a 25-year-old clear cut, which isn't very nice. It was wet, soggy, swampy, and difficult to find your way around. This portage did suck. Did I say that already? It sucked.
As you were told by Dave, my name is Kate Barrett, and I've had the honor of taking part on a 50-day canoe trip as a camper and leading 2 as a staff member. I am here to share with you the journey of discovering the Canadian wilderness as well as ourselves on a 50-day adventure. First, we plan our route. This is done with the help of staff members who have done long trips in the past. At TSC, we have a wonderful map room which has maps of all of the regions we've explored. We normally spend 2 to 5 days in the map room figuring out where we want to go, organizing where our food drops will be, how long each of our segments will be, how many kilometers we will travel per day, while also considering access points for every day in case of a needed evacuation. Once the route is finalized and we know how many days each of our segments will be, we are given 50 days worth of food, and we bag our food to ensure it is properly sealed, waterproof, and then we organize the food into 4 segments. Each day is systematic yet dramatically different. Every day, we wake up early, take down camp, spend the day paddling, portaging, eating, set up camp somewhere new, sleep, repeat. On a typical day, we travel anywhere between 20 to 35 kilometers, depending on the terrain. Although the day-to-day of this routine stays the same, we are faced with different terrain, weather, and new obstacles, which makes every day new and exciting. As time passes, routines are solidified, and we develop a dynamic. The groove manifests in many ways. Efficiency in which roles and routines are well-defined, emotional support, grit, camaraderie, and good humor. The ability to laugh at outrageously unfortunate circumstances is, in my opinion, fundamental to a long canoe trip. That all being said about efficiency and teamwork, there is a magic that happens on trip. Some people know it as bush crazy, but I like to think of it as freedom. These young women come from a hyper-connected, overly monitored, high-pressure social media world and rapidly transition into a reality so disconnected that they do not see their reflection for 50 days. All they know and all they see is each other and nature.
So I'll just give you a little bit of sense of the route that we're looking at. So I'm on a long-term canoe trip with my family and friends, and this is what I'm paddling. It's if you go fast enough, that keeps the water out. I rescued this boat from a friend's backyard. It had been slowly rotting into the ground over the years, and slowly pieced it back together, recanvassed it, and it ends up looking like this. there are a few places like this is in Hespeler, where there actually is a way to get to the water, but most of the dams along the system really aren't set up for portaging. So they're nothing like the portages that you did, but you would think that people paddle them and then they should actually have some markings and whatnot, but they don't for whatever reason. This is the 401. So this is kind of an interesting thing for me, sort of paddling up to a major highway. It's pretty neat actually coming up to it. This is what it looks like underneath, and you can't see them, but just over here there are a couple of guys drinking. Hot summer day, where better to be than underneath the 401 with your feet in the river, having a cold beer. This is right in sort of downtown Cambridge, and it's pretty neat from the water's perspective. This is Paris, Ontario, so just below another dam. So we pass dam after dam, and we go, hey, another dam portage, because every time you get to a dam, you have to go around it. Some of them are set up to, like I said, some of them are a little bit easier. And this one here in Paris, they've actually kind of set it up quite nicely for people to get around.
Is that we were all indigenous to somewhere. And so when I go into ceremony, I say I'm from Scottish First Nation. And that's something that's been very important that that my friends have taught me, is that you're always indigenous to somewhere. You have ancestors that go back to the land, and they were connected at one point. So that's important to remember. So yeah, I'm purely white, but I'm wearing a traditional shirt because a friend has given me that. So I really am honored to wear that. And then the last thing is I participated in 2 guided fasts at Agua. So I went up to Pakasaw, put my canoe in. It was too rough to go too far, but I stayed in Plater Harbor, and it was after the experience of the sweat lodge. If you've ever felt that before, if you're in a sweat lodge, it's very strong. You feel that sense of connection to the earth. And so I was like stepping out on these rocks and saying, Buju Mashomas, which is Buju grandmother, and Buju Nashomas, which is hello grandfather. And it was just really a different way of thinking. So I did that. I got it a couple times, took some pictures. Eventually I ended up in this place. And as I was sitting there, I was just looking up at the sky for some reason, and suddenly I saw like a cloud formation start changing. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? And I saw 4 images that came to me. And then, just as I was starting to do the very white thing and doubt these images, I suddenly saw this golden eagle came in, and it flew around, circled a couple times, and took off. And I thought, no, this is real. So I went right away to the local reserve and bought some tobacco and came back and offered it to the water. That's the first teaching, is tobacco says thank you. And it's the way you start your ceremony. It's the way you lay it on the ground, or you can put it in the fire. There's a number of ways of doing it, but the way I've been taught is to lay it on the ground or put it in the fire, and it's a thank you. So this is the picture of Agua Rock, and this is a rough day that I was there, and so that represents that one of the spirits is on the rock. Painted on the rock is Mishapishu, one of the Manitou, and there's a number of images. There's 3 images of Mishapishu. This one is one that you have to go by canoe or walk around the rock to see on the far side. And this is one that's really close to the beginning. That's the sturgeon and Mishapishu. So a very important spot to visit Mishapishu. This is a rock. I'm just going to take you through a few images, and I'm just going to maybe just let your own heart speak to you about these images. Because they don't, there's nobody that knows 100% what they mean, but there's some thoughts. And you can read books about them, but some of them might mean something to you today.
So we've been paddling Killarney for about the last 10 years, my family and I. So when I say my family and I, it's my husband, my 4 kids, and our 2 dogs. So it's no 50-day trip, and it's no trip with teenagers, although now I have 4 Sherpas. But I wouldn't do 50 days. We do about 10 to 12 days throughout our canoe trip over the summer. So the blue water, the rolling rock, it's all very reminiscent of the Killarney landscape. Acid rain has played a large part in the blue waters. Killarney has some of the lakes are naturally high in pH. So lakes like Nelly and OSA, they were already a little bit blue, but the acid rain kind of amplified that, and they are on a slow recovery. But what that means for us is that the lakes have fishing restrictions on some of them now because the lake population suffered with the aquatic systems being compromised. Kevin's Killarney book has come with us on every trip that we've taken. Even if we've gone on the same route, it comes with us every single time because, you know, when we want to look at something or we want to plan next year's route, we'll just pull it out and have a look. But this was really a valuable guide for us when we were starting to paddle Killarney. And we did paddle, like David said, if you've paddled Algonquin, we started out paddling Algonquin. And we did slowly move from Algonquin to Killarney when we thought that, you know, the kids could do it. So along with the rocks, in a lot of the lowland areas, you do experience the liftovers. And there's not something that, you know, they're not usually marked on the map. There's something that you just come upon and move along. And I included this one because this was last year. And the year before, it was a paddle, kind of just a slightly lift over, get one leg out and slide over it. This last year, we're over 3 feet up from the water line. So it just shows you how rapidly the beavers can change the landscape along some of the paddling routes. This was on Howery Creek, and it was riddled with these further along to the takeout there. Again, the portages, take your time. You'll get through them. They're nothing to be afraid of, those long ones. So if you're sitting in the audience and you thought, okay, well, I've gone in and I've done Freeland and George and into Killarney and OSA, but the other ones kind of look hard, don't be afraid. Just because they're long, take your time. You can get through it. We've done it with the kids, so if the little kids can do it, so can you.
I'm going to ask Andy, could you help me present this, because you were on the trip?
What can I do?
They were bad, weren't they?
They were bad.
And we've been a lot of places. Really, up by the Kopka, Wawagigamau, Woodland Caribou, Nipissing River in June. Far worse than that.
Yeah, I remember us paddling along the river, and I'm like, ow, ow. Will you guys just give me a break? They're biting my ass through the canoe seat, the webbing on the canoe seat. I'm like, ah.
I told Andy, he didn't like the Nipissing actually. He really said, what's the big deal about this? And I love it because I'm a trout fisherman, right? And I said, well, you'll see lots of moose. Man, we saw a lot of moose. The first one was dead.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
But, well, remember that night where we had to chase the moose off the site?
Yes. So we're trying to find a campsite, and it's like, oh, there it is up ahead. And it's like, wait a minute, what's the big brown thing doing on the campsite? And then he left a message for Kevin before he left.
Right on the tent pad. We were going, come on, get out of here, and then just looked at us and then peed right there. So we ended up sleeping in the bug shelter, but then
it was party night for moose, because as the night kind of dimmed down and went to twilight and then dark, they were coming out of everywhere, and it was like, hey, let's go eat. And they were up and down the creek all night long.
That was amazing. What, was there at least 8?
Yeah.
So, right in front of us the whole night. All right, so what happened at that point was really lucky, and Andy and I were sitting in the bug shelter the one night at the Nipissing, and we really questioned why we were doing this, because we're not type A personalities. You're supposed to do this in a race. We're not supposed to, but a lot of people do it in the race. The record is 7 days. We did it in 3 weeks. And so we were doing it for different reasons. We actually want to enjoy ourselves in the wilderness. We want to spend as much time as possible in the wilderness. I'm a happy camper. I don't try to survive, I thrive. So it's a big difference. So when we got to this point, we're like, why exactly are we doing this? And you made a good point. Why are we doing the hardest part of Algonquin? And why not we go somewhere else? So we looked at the map, but then we saw a salmon turtle. We're really quite bored. There's not much to do out there. So we were sitting and having a dram. And once again, in the shelter, and we saw the salmon turtle move up the bank. And it took 26 minutes for it to get to the top. And then it tripped on itself, fell all the way down. And Andy looked at me, he goes, I think we should continue. I said, why? Because we don't have the life of that turtle.
Yeah, we don't got it that bad.